Well, after enough testing, this Smith of Katava build is absolutely insane, not only for leveling through the campaign, but for even doing later game maps, and it just completely decimates everything with insane AoE and literally makes you a tank and keeps you from dying. Now, this build lets you level insanely fast and is insanely strong. So if you're wanting to level a warrior, or you're even halfway through it and want to get ready for an in-game maps build, and you want something that moves and destroys everything very quickly, this is the build for you. I'll take you through everything, acts 1, 2, 3, all the cruel acts, even a little bit into mapping, so that way I can explain in detail the full setup, and you can pause and follow along as you're leveling, and it'll make it a lot easier. There's also a build link that you can save and check out below as a reference. I'll touch on the skill tree real quick, but again, in the build link in the description, you can follow it from levels 1 to 75, so that way you know exactly what to take where. But just to give you a quick rundown on how this works, ideally at the beginning, we're taking a lot of melee damage early on just to help us get through the initial part of the campaign. We're also coming over here and taking, again, more damage, more area of effect. The more area of effect and the more damage we take, the bigger our bone shatterers are. Initially early, we take these skill speed bonuses. Again, it allows us to attack a lot quicker and makes a big difference in our clear speed. Eventually, we come over here and again take additional attack speed as well for the same reason, and then again more increased attack area and more increased attack area damage, as well as the additional increases to our armor here. One big increase in our armor right here is 80% increase from our equipped body armor. This is something you can definitely take early for some survivability. Now, this stuff you may take a little bit later. Ideally, we're immediately probably going to want to path straight down here over to this resolute technique node. This makes it so your hits can't be evaded, and early on in the campaign, this is a real problem with the warrior because enemies can just evade your hits and you're just swinging and hitting nothing. This solves that problem pretty instantly. And then some of these buffs up here for increased stun buildup and breaking up armor are pretty big for our setup as well. Keep in mind, we'll also take this stuff over here for more additional damage with our two-handers. We'll take this pretty early, as you can see in the planner. We'll take the big bonuses to our strength here. We'll also take more empowered attacks down here for additional damage for our empowered attacks for our perfect strike. The extra strength bonuses and damage bonuses down here. The conversion for Avatar of Fire, so that way we're dealing now all fire damage, which we can increment, which we can then spec up with more elemental damage. Stun build-up nodes to spec then into Titanic to make sure our leap slam can always prime stun enemies. Again, we get more increased attack area damage here and more area of effect. One of the big things also is going to be taking these armor nodes, so that way you get increased armor, so that way our survivability is up. And then eventually you'll come up here and take the Vengeful Fury node and some of these other rage nodes, so that way if you get hit by an enemy, you get rage, meaning more damage. And then these nodes up here for extra melee damage as well, and the additional armor nodes. Keep in mind, this blood magic node makes it so that all of our costs for our skills are coming out of our life pool. I really think this is not only a good quality of life skill, but a much better skill to play once you're comfortable with it, because you don't have to worry about mana, running out of mana, using mana potions, etc. You just literally never have to worry about it. So eventually take this, it'll make your life a lot easier. Again, all those 1 through 75 are down in the description. Keep in mind, once you unlock some jewels, take things like fire damage, bonuses to our armor, bonuses to our empowered attack, additional attack damage, attack speed. Those 5 things will make a huge difference early if you find them on your jewels. And if you notice, I have strength selected for a lot of these nodes. For some of them, I do have dexterity and intelligence just because I needed them to actually slot as you need them for different support gems. This is how you set up every little piece. First things first, we'll get Rolling Slam very early on in the game. This will drop immediately at the beginning of Act 1. When you get your first uncut skill gem, you're going to immediately want to take Bone Shatter here as your first skill. Again, if you're unfamiliar, the way this works is when we hit an enemy enough times, meaning if a normal enemy has at least 40% stun bar, they will be primed for stun with that little glowing orb above their head. With Bone Shatter, we can then hit them with Bone Shatter. They will essentially explode into a shockwave and deal a decent amount of damage. We use this for huge AoE clear through the campaign. So you'll spec that with your first uncut skill gem level 1 or 2. And then next, you'll also take Earthquake. Earthquake is great, so if you heavy stun an enemy, you can throw Earthquake down, it will slow them, and then also do a powerful aftershock at the end. We use this after heavy stunning bosses for some extra damage. Now, once you unlock your first support gems, this is where it starts to get good. First, you take Impact Shockwave into Bone Shatter. This actually calls an aftershock when you heavy stun an enemy, meaning when you hit them with your Bone Shatter, meaning it explodes and deals the same damage to all enemies around you. This basically gives you huge AoE clear immediately in the campaign. Next support gem we get, we'll take Ruthless and slot this in the Mace Strike skill. This is going to give us 500% extra stun build up on every 5th attack, meaning you can mace attack a boss and be able to stun them much quicker early on. This will be followed followed up by taking Overpower on our Mace Strike, which makes supported skills cause 50% more stun build up, again helping us to fight off those early game bosses and prime enemies for stun so we can Bone Shatter them into oblivion. And then you'll take Magnified Effect here for Bone Shatter, so that way we get 30% more area of effect, more AoE, more clearing of everyone on the screen. Next, once you get your level 3 and 4 skill gems, we're going to slot 2 skills, Shockwave Totem and Infernal Cry. First, Shockwave Totem is great because when you throw it down, it repeatedly damages nearby enemies, and Jagged Ground actually erupts also when hit by the slam from the totem. So again, we're going to use Earthquake to throw down Jagged Ground, and then Shockwave Totem that will hit and proc that Jagged Ground. So when we heavy stun bosses, we can drop this on the ground and deal a decent amount of damage early. Again, you want to use this really on bosses and rares for that extra damage early on. And then also we're going to take Infernal Cry here. Infernal Cry overall increases our Warcry speed, and it empowers the next attack with extra damage, meaning early on you can cast Infernal Cry before you drop down your Earthquake, and then your Shockwave Totem to then proc the Earthquake explosions for extra damage. So it's a great pairing. Or Infernal Cry with Bone Shatter or Mace Strike, it ups your damage of your next empowered attack regardless. Keep in mind as we go, continue to upgrade with other skill gems that you get after I talk about taking these specific skills that are needed. For support gems, the very next ones you want to take is Martial Tempo for your Shockwave Totem, so that way your Shockwave Totems have more attack speed, hence more slams for extra damage. Also, you can take Fire Infusion and slam it on your totem as well. This is going to give us extra overall fire damage, and this can be a great skill to clear out those bosses early. Once you progress far enough in Act 1, you'll then want to take the Herald of Ash. Again, this does an explosion with overkill damage, so when we prime an enemy for stun, Bone Shatter most of them, this will give us extra explosion damage of that overkill damage. So when we do more damage than an enemy has health, that overkill damage ignites nearby enemies and again does a lot more damage and a lot more explosions for us. Make sure you actually right click to activate this and turn this on, and you'll see this up here in the top left. Make sure you do that. It makes a huge difference whether or not it's on or off. Now, once we get our uncut skill gems 5 and 6, we're going to primarily focus on this, which is one of our most important upgrades, is taking Perfect Strike. This essentially is an attack that we can use that will charge up, and when the glowing little red spot happens right in the middle of that attack, that's when you want to time it and let it go. That's when you're going to do your most overall damage with a perfect release on a Perfect Strike. Keep in mind, once you unlock Perfect Strike, you're going to want to use Infernal Cry to buff up the extra damage of your next attack, to then use Perfect Strike and get a really big hit. Now, the very next support gems you want to use here are first Window of Opportunity. This gives you a shorter perfect timing window for your Perfect Strike, but rewards you with a lot more damage, which is extremely useful early. And then you also want to take Premeditation for Infernal Cry. That way, skills empowered by supported skills actually deal 15% more damage, meaning you deal more damage when you buff with Infernal Cry than use something like Perfect Strike. And as of right now, that's your setup for Act 1. That's really all you need up until this point. Keep in mind, I will have more open gem slots because my gems are a little higher level since I've leveled them already. Keep in mind, as you follow along with the skills and gems that I'm selecting, the build planner below also has all your passives, exactly how you should level them. Once we get to Act 2, we're going to go ahead and take Leap Slam. Now, while using Leap Slam, we get more stun build up with this, so we're able to jump across the map a lot faster and jump and land on enemies and immediately prime them for stun in most cases, meaning we can then Bone Shatter them. One thing to keep in mind is when you're Bone Shattering an enemy, the animation can actually take a lot longer than you need it to. One thing you want to do is hit with Bone Shatter and then immediately roll out of it to be able to move across the map and fight packs a lot easier. Also, you can do the same thing, canceling out of the last bit of the Leap Slam animation by rolling out of it. You can see if we jump, we actually have to finish the animation before we can walk or do anything again. But if you jump and then roll out of it, you get that entire extra distance. Also here, what you can do once you unlock Leap Slam is actually take the Martial Tempo glyph out of Shockwave Totem and throw it down here into Leap Slam. That way you're able to Leap Slam at a much faster speed. It'll help you get across the map way quicker. One thing I recommend doing early on, if you do happen to have any problems, if your Perfect Strike is too slow and it's causing you to struggle in boss fights, then while you're running around, you can actually take Martial Tempo, throw it in Perfect Strike when you need to for bosses, and then just throw it right back into Leap Slam to go across the map. It makes bossing way, way easier. Here you can also take Fire Infusion from Shockwave Totem and also throw it in Perfect Strike to deal extra damage with it, since this will be one of our main boss finishers. Now again, this is the setup for Act 2. It's pretty similar. We swapped some stuff around and added Leap Slam for mobility. Again, continue to level up these skills as you get more skill gems. Now, once you get through Act 2 or 3, you should have enough power with your build by now to go ahead and do your initial 2 Ascendancies. So what you can do is once you finish one or both of them, the first thing I would definitely take is this path over here for fire resistance, into Coal Stoker. This makes it so modifiers to fire resistance also give us cold and lightning resistance at 50% of their value. This is great and one of the best leveling skills out of every skill probably in the game, because that means that you can just stack fire resistance and it will take care of your other two main resistances. You don't really see chaos in the campaign, and this can help you max out your resistances super easy without having to go through, find gear, and worry about that. That's like one of the most frustrating things about the campaign, and it's solved with this perk right here. Also, once you get your second Ascendency, you can really do one of two things. If you have armor that you really like that you don't really need to worry about, you can continue to use that armor and take this melee damage and against the anvil, which gives you the temper weapon skill, which you can use to empower a bunch of attacks. Otherwise, what you can do is if you find a base set of armor, so meaning a white normal set of armor, you can continue to find better and better as you level, and you don't actually have to ever upgrade anything. You can just take the Smith's Masterwork skill. It means you can only use a normal body armor, but you can then spec out exactly what you want. And I'm telling you right now, if you do this and you select leather bindings, so that way you regenerate 5% of your max life per second, you'll be healing yourself super quick, and tantalum alloy, that way you get 75% fire resistance. This right here combined with this skill over here, almost even without other resistances, gives you a ton to your resistances already. You just essentially need like one or two maybe fire resistance affixes on like your ring and maybe some boots or something, and you will be maxed on basically all of your categories, even in the cruel difficulties. Now once we get into Act 3, we can start setting up some more gems, but we want to make sure that during Act 3, if you haven't found a lesser jeweler's orb already, you want to make sure when you get to the Sandswept Marsh that you actually find this lesser jeweler's orb located right here, as you can see in the picture. And then you want to actually add a third slot to your perfect strike. Again, meaning we can use our martial tempo here for faster perfect strike swings or a more damage oriented gem. Ideally, you can take execute, put that right here in perfect strike. And then whenever you need to use perfect strike, simply swap out martial tempo with execute so you can get faster swings, but still also have execute in when not fighting bosses in perfect strike. And then whenever you need it, just swap in martial tempo for bigger boss fights. That'll make bossing a lot easier in the campaign. Next, we'll want to take Raging Cry and put that in our second spot for Infernal Cry. This is going to give us rage per power of counted enemies within our range, which again can buff our skills, give us rage, and give us way more damage while we have rage. And then one of the absolute biggest ones for Leap Slam, we want to slot the Brink support gem. This makes it so our stun buildup when leap slamming can't actually reach 100%. The problem people have had before is you can over stun enemies and heavy stun them on accident, meaning none of them are primed, and then we can't bone shatter them. By using the Brink gem, this makes it so that way they can basically only get to like 99% stun buildup. That way all of the enemies prime all of the time, and you can bone shatter all of them at once basically every single time. Now once you unlock, so that way you have at least 60 spirit within Act 3, at that point you want to make sure you also take Scavenged Plating. This is going to give us more armor for each set of Scavenged Plating that we have, which we can keep up pretty consistently. It just makes us tankier and makes going through the campaign a lot easier. And once you get this activated, it's pretty much a GG for you staying alive way easier. And so this would be basically our setup after Act 3. Again, you can fill in some of these skills with extra support gems. Now once we get into Cruel Act 1, once you get an uncut skill gem 8, 9, or 10, you basically want to go ahead and pick up Seismic Cry next. Seismic Cry empowers your next melee slam attack you perform to basically do a lot more damage, stun, buildup, etc. We're going to want to use this to then spec in and use our Hammer of the Gods, which is just going to add on to the damage we're dealing. Now once you get into Cruel Act 2, the very first thing we're going to want to do is take Hammer of the Gods and actually replace Earthquake with Hammer of the Gods. We no longer need Earthquake. This will require building up glory to use, and basically you get glory by heavy stunning enemies. So by bone shattering them after they're primed for stun, you build up glory, and then you'll have then the glory to use to cast Hammer of the Gods with. Again, you want to prime those enemies for stun with Mace Strike or with Leap Slam, and then bone shatter them for the heavy stun. You'll get glory to use Hammer of the Gods. You can then use Seismic Cry followed up by Infernal Cry, and then use your Hammer of the Gods to drop a massive amount of DPS on their head. Keep in mind, your Seismic Cry actually performs an extra entire attack, doubling its damage if you do this immediately after heavy stunning an enemy. So if you heavy stun, let's say a boss, and then you use Seismic Cry and Infernal Cry, you're getting all the insane damage buffs. Now we're going to cut some more support gems. So the first thing you want to do is slot in Concentrated Effect for our Hammer of the Gods. Again, this is just going to give us less area of effect, but more overall damage. Then we're going to take Heavy Swing for Hammer of the Gods. So that way this deals more damage, just gives up a little less attack speed. And then another big one is Reach for your Bone Shatter. This is going to make it so that Bone Shatter actually has 80% less accuracy against enemies, but it gives us 35% more area of effect. meaning we can wipe more mobs off the screen way faster with the overall accuracy penalty, which once you have a little bit of accuracy in your build, let's say even just one of these rings that gives you accuracy rating, you really don't notice this at all. Then finally, I would use Fist of War and slot this into Hammer of the Gods. Now, once you get into Cruel Act 3, one of the main things we'll do is take Herald of Ash and actually drop in our Cannibalism gem. That way, 2% of our max life is recovered on kill, so we can go into the campaign and even mapping and replenish our health all on our own. Now, let's go over the gear and what you're specifically kind of looking for. Again, your mace, you want specifically the most damage possible. We want to go with a two-hander. And again, you want to look for primarily increased percent physical damage and flat damage, like increases to our physical flat damage, or even increases to things like fire damage are fine. Also, increased elemental damage and level to melee skills and strength is also good. Ideally, early on, go for the percent increase to damage and flat increase to damage, and then strength, and you should pretty much be fine throughout the campaign. Now for our helmet, again, just take the helmet with the most armor possible. Again, things like strength, more armor, max life is always better. For our gloves, things to aim for are increased attack speed. This will help you get through the campaign a lot quicker by experience, trust me. Again, as well as armor and strength. The same goes for our boots. The big thing with the boots is make sure you have movement speed on them. If not, buy a pair of movement speed boots with like 25-30% movement speed. Trust me when I say this, it'll make your life a lot easier. For the belt, again, same things, armor, resistances, max life, etc. Our chest plate, which we want normal for our Smith of Katava Ascendency. And then our rings, again, try and aim for fire resistance rings if you can get them. That way we can stack our fire resistance and easily max out all our resistances this way. And again, other things like strength and flat damage and max life are also good on our rings as well. Your amulet, you can use anything you want. You can use a bump to spirit for your amulet, or once you get high enough level, make sure you grab a Zoph's blood amulet. This is going to make it so enemies in your presence actually have fire exposure. What that does is it actually gives them a debuff, so if they're near you, they get minus 20% fire resistance. This means you get a bunch of extra damage on every enemy you fight once you put this amulet on. It's one of the best setups for these builds in the entire game. Here are the stats for the build too. Again, prioritizing your resistances through Smith of Katava and making sure you're stacking fire resistance, as well as stacking max life earlier on your gear for survivability, extra strength for extra life, and then again armor. That way we're very, very protected resistance and armor wise. It'll make you almost impossible to kill early with this insane defensive setup. Again, with focusing on movement speed, you should be pretty chilling throughout pretty much the entire campaign and maps with this setup. Now I'll do a full video for the mapping portion, but once you get into maps, essentially this is kind of how you can have everything set up. Again, I'll show you everything how I have it set up here. That way, in case you're already at maps or you want to jump straight into the map setup, you can go ahead and do that right here. Ideally, again, this is just maximizing our damage with Perfect Strike, making Leaf Slam as quick as possible, priming as many enemies as we can, and then using things like Cannibalism and Herbalism for our Herald of Ash, so that way we're constantly healing from these, and Scavenge Plating with Persistence. That way we have more skill effect duration, which means our scavenge plating lasts a lot longer, keeps us protected a lot longer. I'll break down the full map setup in our next video and show you how amazing this thing is when it comes to maps and how it just blows through everything in the game.